Let's go.
Perfect. So if you could just start off by introducing yourself and your role at Humber.
Sure. So my name is Kavelle Maharaj, and I'm the event coordinator and community liaison at Humber College at the principal's office. Do you want me to tell you a little bit more about the role as well?
That would be wonderful.
Awesome. So it's an interesting role where I'm able to plan a variety of experiences for a wide audience, including students, faculty, and staff, but also the Etobicoke Lakeshore community. It's a great mix of social events like health, mindfulness, and wellness virtual events, but also educational events like workshops, conferences, community engagement pieces like the Gardens Project or like Culture Days with art and cultural programming. But the best part is also those work integrated learning opportunities for students in various programs like the Indigenous Transmedia Fellowship or even the staff's holiday party. I love the fact that the role is so diverse. So you can connect internally and externally, establish partnerships, and help shape programming and projects, but also mentor students and become active citizens through the programming our office does.
Wonderful. And watching the Gardens Project last summer, I can firsthand see your impact. So that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing.
No worries.
And so obviously you're doing a variety of things right now. What are the career choices that have kind of led you to this role today?
Yeah. So thinking back on this question, it took a while, and I tried a few things before I landed on what I do today. And my background is actually originally in sport management and business management, having worked in organizations in the Caribbean in the realm of sport for development. And while I did this for a few years and I completely loved it, I loved working in the field, building capacity and empowering others through physical literacy education. I also realized there were some downfalls in the nonprofit industry as well, and I was being a bit limited in terms of growth. So the one thing I did know was that I liked helping and mentoring persons to be good and do good in whatever way they can and to also make people happy. I moved to Canada in 2013 as a student and attended Humber College in the events management postgraduate certificate program and landed an internship at Celebration Square in Mississauga. So, in that internship, I was actually able to be creative in how events were planned and also volunteering to understand the Canadian culture and culture in general here, and causes and more about the industry before actually moving into a nonprofit job supporting fundraising efforts for Crohn's and Colitis Canada through their signature event, Gutsy Walk. And it finally came full circle when I landed a position back at Humber in my current role. When I moved, I actually volunteered for different causes around health and wellness, like Yoga Palooza, sports with Volleyball Canada events, and arts and culture like Nuit Blanche as a method to network and also broaden my view for a career.
Wow, I
I know it's a
I would
lot.
I'd like to think that I know you, but that was so much that I don't know. But
I have a, a good background in terms of the experiences I've been able to have.
well, and what a great example of no career is really straight and narrow, which I'm learning
Yeah.
myself. And so,
Yeah.
wow, thank you for sharing that.
Right.
So as you know, one of Humber's values is sustainability, and we work very closely. But how do you address this in the work that you do?
Okay. So the event industry is known for a lot of wastage, which is not great for sustainability. Um, so pre-COVID, I'd like to start probably pre-COVID before we get into what we do now.
Yeah.
When planning an event, an in-person event, I would usually take a few steps when I am promoting sustainable events. So to when I kind of wrote a few notes around this was experiences rather than physical swag. So if physical swag had to be purchased, I had to justify like what can be used repeatedly and will persons actually want to use this.
Right.
Usually I'll try to do walks to partnership meetings or call virtually or just pick up the phone to reduce my carbon footprint. Using electronic pieces more as much as possible, and the use of social media and email to advertise, or very limited in printing or posters or signage. If it has to be printed, I would usually say it has to be generic where it can be used for multiple years or on a material that can be recycled. Um, but usually the general rule of thumb here is the projection of a print. The waste and food, that's another major factor in the industry I work in. And I would usually try to monitor how many attendees are attending our events, understanding that there'll also be some drop off, but the items being ordered and working with our catering company to choose those more locally sourced options, those fair trade options, more vegetarian options, and paying the extra for things like dishes or linens, to support that sustainability element rather than paper or plastic items.
Right.
Right now, it would look a little different if we were to congregate in one setting because of COVID and some of those elements that I just mentioned above. Um, but also before, encouraging sustainability pieces in events like bringing your own bottles or bringing your own cups to specific outdoor events that we may have, making the attendee experience as paperless as possible. So using more of those technology pieces and iPads to make those registration process as seamless without having any printing involved. Encouraging attendees to walk or carpool is another option. And usually, if I wasn't in that Humber setting, usually as an event planner, you'd look for buildings that have or venues that have similar values as you. But we are fortunate at Humber to have some of these buildings like the Student Welcome and Resource Center or L Commons or G Commons that are LEED certified. So it's making the option to choose those sustainable options a lot easier, to choose to use natural lighting because of the features that these buildings have, like those glass panes and power saving methods on computers or just in the space itself has been helpful to keep events sustainable. With virtual events now, it's basically completely different from those in-person events when it comes to it's a lot more sustainable, right? And because of all those elements that I've mentioned above, they've been reduced. So we have less waste. And however, with the vaccination rollout and the hopeful return to events or some sort of hybrid options, many of these suggestions would also have to be reviewed to ensure that waste is still kept to a minimum. So it's exciting times to see like how this industry will develop as we move forward, post COVID.
Yeah, and especially if some of those virtual elements are here to stay, even when we go back in person, will be really interesting from an accessibility standpoint. I think you touched on a lot of really good points that any event.
I tried to capture all the
Person
things
will.
I think I yeah, it took me a while when I sat and reflected on that question. It's like, wow, we actually do a lot without realizing it.
Yeah, from buildings to lighting to catering. Yeah, and I think that you also provide a lot of great helpful hints and tips for any event person watching this video. So thank you for that. My next question is a little bit of a big one, but why is sustainability important to you?
So reflecting on this, I had to figure out like really what does it mean to me, because we talk about this all the time. And to me, what resonated the most was meeting the present needs without compromising the ability of the future generations to meet their own needs. And there are many ways we can do this, whether it's through environmental conservation, social responsibility, or economic development. And I know the focus usually is on that environmental piece when we say sustainability, and to me it's a bit more. It's more about about people and the health of our communities. And it's important to me because, well, we have to protect and preserve our ecosystems, and we have to improve the quality of life for everyone. It's part of our responsibility to look at our present choices, and not not just for now, but also our future generations, and how we use or deplete resources to sustain the planet. It's important to educate ourselves about more ethical choices and what we can do to support sustainability, but also create those healthy habits for long-term benefits, whether it is reducing our consumption in some ways or reducing energy, personally, I don't think that I'm an expert, and I'm still very much learning and growing to be able to do my part to protect the environment for the future. Um, but some of the things I currently do that I think it's small but still impactful when you add it up as one total, it's like choosing things like sustainable billing options by going paperless. That's something simple
Mhm.
everyone can do. Not investing in that fast fashion trends, but rather being more selective of the items you buy new, or thrifting or repurposing items for other uses. Buying a lot used. So we recently bought a home during pandemic last year, and uh, it was it was kind of fun to furnish homes with a lot of used items or used furniture pieces that we're able to get creative and make it our own. I invested in an electric car to reduce like my carbon emissions.
Wow. Yeah.
And it's easier for our family to carpool now because we're all at home. Um, but
Yeah.
in terms of food options, we've checked out like local farmers markets for fresh produce, and also using things like reusable bags and produce bags and reusable bottles, supporting local businesses with similar values,
Yeah.
um, and following eco. There's a lot more of those eco-friendly and sustainability sites as well as pages that help me to learn more about, well, hey, what other things can I do to support this cause?
Mhm.
um, we have tried eating more vegetarian options as possible, understanding that
Mhm.
my family sometimes will like meat, but we're trying to broaden our scope on what our menu looks like at home and what
Yeah.
we give the kids as well. And just being able to like recycle items, so things like takeout containers or bags that we
Yeah.
receive from when we go out. And for summer, we now that we have a yard space, we're trying to do these raised bed gardens for kids to learn well about
Wow.
food production, and for us to see if we can actually grow our own vegetable and harvest to use. I'm not very much of a green thumb, but we're trying, and it's exciting to be able to do that right now that we have some
Yeah.
extra time at home.
Wow. I think something that you touched on was really important is that you're no expert. And I just want to assure you that nobody is an expert in sustainability. I was once at a webinar, and the keynote speaker had said that we're all kind of pioneers right now, figuring out what's the sustainable route to go, whether it's events or in education or whatever it may be. And I mean, even our manager, Devin, he always says, I've never taken a course in climate change. Like there's people working in sustainability that haven't taken sustainability focused or specific courses. So I think all of the things that you're doing are going to create one big impact, and what a great opportunity for your kids to see all of your efforts as well and
Yeah,
watch those things that they take with them. So
yeah.
thank you for
It's
sharing
it's
that.
interesting. No worries, and it's interesting because what the kids really do take it. I have like two little 3-year-olds,
Hmm.
and they even understand like, okay, when there's something to throw in the trash, they know the difference between the bins, and they'll know which one to throw it in at that young age already. Which I'm like,
Wow.
it's really interesting to see them pick up on it and
Yeah.
continue it, right?
Yeah. They're like little sponges.
I know. They are.
And so you've kind of answered my next question, just with some of the efforts that you do at home. But do you contribute to any environmental or social causes off campus at all?
So it's a bit tied into my work at campus, but
Mhm.
the Gardens Pod project is the major one that I really focus on because it takes up the majority of our spring into almost
Yeah.
fall at times. And it's a project that supports the growth of produce to donate to persons who are food insecure in the South Etobicoke area. But it
Mhm.
also promotes the education element around food justice, food insecurity, gardening, and other topics that persons may want to know around those education pieces.
Yeah.
I Because I recently moved last year to Hamilton, I'm still in the process of trying to find the right fit for me to support in
Mhm.
terms of a specific local group. And it's a little difficult to learn the landscape during a pandemic because you're not able to be out as often and speak to people
Yeah.
or It's a different feeling when you speak virtually or trying to connect virtually with groups. But fingers crossed that that will happen soon with some of the vaccine rollout.
Yes, hopefully. So then I guess my next question, just before I leave room for you to add any last comments, what advice do you have for anyone that wants to get involved with environmental or social projects, but either doesn't know where to begin or they've already started and just kind of don't know where to go from here? Any
Okay.
advice you have?
Yeah, so I do have a few things, and the first thing would be is that find things that are important to you. What gives you purpose, and also think of things that you are good at. And for different persons, it might be different, right? Um, Question what you think the world needs right now, but also ask. So ask
Yeah.
communities what you think the world needs right now. Um, and what drives you, what is your passion, and if you have all of those pieces, then you can find those interconnecting pieces to say, okay, I know what I want to be a part of. And then once you figure that out, to start looking for organizations that match your beliefs. So do your research a bit about it, because there's so much information out there, sorry, that
Mm.
may not actually be factual, or
Right.
some organizations say they do things, but it's not exactly what they do. Um, Reach out and have meaningful conversations to people from those organizations to see if it's really what you want to be involved in.
Mhm.
But also volunteer or attend events virtually at this time, to use your skills to help that cause, right? And I'm not saying everyone has to give time. If you're unable to give time, but you've done your research and think that, hey, I'm able to contribute financially to further
Mhm.
this cause, then you can also do that, right? Because our lives are different. Some persons have no time at all between work and family life and what's
Yeah.
happening right now. And there are other persons who need to socialize more and will have
Yeah.
that extra time. Connect with persons on LinkedIn, which is very similar to what you might do when you're searching for a career as well too,
Yeah.
to start having those informational pieces. But in the end, I think the most important piece here would always be to start small, so that
Mm.
you alone cannot save the planet. It's definitely like a collective effort. Um,
Yeah.
However, you can control what the little pieces you can do to make it better.
Mhm.
So that would be my advice for anyone that is interested in learning more about any social causes or sustainability, or getting involved to help.
Thank you. I think that that's great advice. And you didn't really preach anything that you haven't already said that you're doing yourself, which is also really nice. So
Yeah.
thank you for that. Is there anything else that you'd like to add before we wrap up? Any final comments, remarks?
Um, I think I've covered quite a bit, but
Yeah.
if you are ever lost as a student in terms of how can you start getting into the field for sustainable jobs, would be to reach out to someone from Humber about it.
Mhm.
Whether it is Sustain Humber or one of our offices that work closely, we will definitely support that information and help you get along your way.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Kavelle. This concludes our interview. And again, on behalf of the Office of Sustainability and the entire Humber community, I just want to thank you for all of the wonderful events that you do for staff and students, and for your time this morning to highlight all of your sustainable initiatives on and off campus.
Thanks, Claire.